Arcade Heroes.
Hi, this is Adam Pratt with ArcadeHeroes.com, and I am here with...
This is Eric ShouTime Chung, CEO of Exa-Arcadia. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for joining me. It took us a little while to figure out when we could sit down and just talk about Exa-Arcadia, California Extreme, all that stuff, but we figured it out, found a place that's not so noisy. If you've been to California Extreme, then you know you probably should go with earplugs.
Yeah, and it's a long day on Saturday, right, until 2 a.m.
Yes. Yeah, and so it wears you out, but I guess so far, how's the show been for you?
I think it's been really interesting because we are showing new stuff as an exhibitor, and Stern is here as well, right, showing stuff from pinball. So, it's a good mix of new stuff and obviously the classics that are here. I see a lot of new games like Raw Thrills, Ninja Turtles is here too.
Yeah, a couple of those, and a few other things like the Atari Pong table that Eunice is producing, and they were telling me they're going to have the coin-operated versions out by the end of the year, September, October, somewhere around there. But yeah, it definitely is. It spans the ages. They only don't have a computer space here.
Right.
But they have a Pong.
We've seen like different demographics. The individuals who are collectors, smaller operators come through. So it's been good to get their feedback on our product, let them test it out, and show that it's for real. Right. It is a real product.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, is this the first time you've been to California Extreme, or?
Yeah, it's strange. I used to live in the area, but this is my first time at CAX itself. So, it's basically arcade PAX.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's the first time I've been to CAX as well, and it's actually the first time I've ever been to anything quite like this, because I've been to a lot of trade shows, but those have a completely different vibe because they have a different demographic, you have a different selection of games. I mean, it's stuff like IAPA, you never have that many games around to play, and so it's a different but nice vibe. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's important to reach out to both of those crowds.
Yeah.
Obviously, like IAPA is the trade show for operators and distributors.
Yeah.
Guys like Betson, of course, they're going to go there. But here you have the actual players, right?
Right.
The potential guys who will go to the locations and play those games. So it's important, I think, to get feedback from them so we can optimize the games for those operators at IAPA.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. It's a nice relationship, because I think a lot of the times manufacturers or developers sometimes just focus solely on the operator, and obviously that makes sense because that's who they're really selling to, but at the same time, if you can get those players in, then they're going to demand of the operators to buy something, and I have that with my own arcade. Once in a while I'll get somebody coming in and say, hey, do you guys have such and such game that's brand new? And be yes or no, but I pay attention to that sort of thing to know what it is that my clientele wants. Because as an operator, I'm not really making anything. I'm providing the experience, but I have to rely on what everybody else is producing to be able to offer it to my crowd.
But as a manufacturer, it's really good for me to provide you with something that the players want, right? And then that's tuned so you make money off of it.
Right, absolutely. So that's something I like to hear.
So that's what we're in tune with, right? So making sure that our games can engage your customer base, and that way you have a good experience of having a quality product.
Right. And I guess to backtrack a little bit for anybody listening, what is Exa-Arcadia?
So Exa-Arcadia is a modular arcade board. It's based on the Japanese JBS standard. We're selling this globally. In Japan, they need JBS.
Right.
Obviously, you could use a JAMA I/O board to use it in a JAMA cabinet. So we work with both CRTs and LCDs. So trying to make something that fits everybody, right? Which is a bit of a challenge. Here in the U.S., CRTs are so prevalent still. And I know some operators have warehouses full of CRTs just for like the next 30 years.
Yeah, I have a back room that has a bunch of tubes, and I just keep looking at it. It's like, what am I going to do with these things?
But you're stocking for the future, right? Just looking at the industry and the landscape here, never really were universal LCD cabinets sold in the U.S. And so we're really cognizant of that. And so we want to make it easy for U.S. operators But at the same time, we sell in China, Japan, and Korea where they have LCD cabinets. And how do we work with both of those?
Right.
So we're really making what we like to call the modern age Neo Geo. We take a lot of inspiration and have a lot of respect for SNK for what they did before. And so it's a modular board that takes 4 different software kits into one motherboard. So in one cabinet, you can have 4 different games.
And how is it when somebody approaches the machine, do they choose between the games? Is it like the Neo Geo, or have you come up with something different?
So it's slightly different in that we have a menu. So you have a main menu split into 4 different areas where each game has its own attract screen. And it basically will cycle through each game's attract in the overall menu mode, and then each game's attract separately.
Gotcha.
So that's how a player can go through it. And it's very obvious to the player because we have icons at the top showing which games are inserted into the machine.
Okay, so a little bit like the marquee from the
Exactly,
MVS
but a digital
system,
version of that.
Digital, gotcha, that's clever. And so what brought about doing all of this? Why create a company that is tackling something that no other manufacturer is wanting to touch? Because I've talked with manufacturers before and say, why don't you guys do kits? And they say, well, we don't make any money off of it, so we're not really interested. So why go that route?
Well, because we saw a problem, right? There's a problem in Japan that hasn't been solved, and seeing Japan as like the mecca of arcade decline was just very depressing, to be honest.
Right.
And last year, seeing more arcades close in Japan and talking with a lot of my operator friends in Japan of the problems that they face. And I talked about it at the panel yesterday about the forced revenue share on all coins put in machines in Japan. And that's really putting a squeeze on operators in Japan where they can't afford to operate. Yeah, we talked about in Japan it's always been 100 yen, like $1 to play video games for almost 4 decades with no inflation. Then yeah, as you know, as an operator, we have your rent's gone up, your employee costs have gone up, but you're going to make less money off the machines that you have to buy. And we wanted to solve this problem. And in Japan, there hasn't been a software kit released since 2012. Right? Everything now is like Taito or Sega's digital platforms that require network contracts. Those platforms aren't available outside Japan.
Right.
So I have a lot of operator friends here in the U.S. and they've all said the same thing, like, "Hey, can I buy that latest Street Fighter 4 from Capcom?" Like, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of content, and a lot of very popular Japanese content has been popular overseas, mainly because it's just not available. So we wanted to change that and have it so that anyone could buy, any operator, and any individual. Myself as an individual collector wants to buy these games as well, but I can't get a lease, can't have the network contract. And so it's a solution that we thought of, hey, why not make a platform that works for collectors, works for operators, works for developers, fixes the problems in the ecosystem, because frankly no one else is doing it.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that helps you stand out because, as you know, with mobile gaming or PC gaming and to a slightly lesser degree console gaming, it's very difficult to get noticed unless you already have a name, tons of money. But with arcade, it's very easy to get noticed because there's not quite as many competitors as far as the content goes.
I think that's true. There are less competitors, but these are like incumbents who have been here for decades.
Yes. So that is difficult to break into.
Yeah, it's difficult to crack into the industry unless you really understand the problems and how to fix them.
Right.
There's obviously been other guys who've come into the industry with their new product and tried to break through, and I think it's difficult if you don't understand the operator side of things and the consumer side.
Right. So have you operated equipment before?
Yeah, so I've actually operated in the Midwest in the 90s.
Oh, really?
Actually. So we originally imported Japanese candy cabinets in the late 90s. We had an arcade in St. Louis.
Oh, nice.
And so at that time, operated about 40 cabinets.
Oh, okay.
So we had kind of a taste for it, and then myself now as a collector, I have 2,500 arcade boards, and a lot of my boards are rented out to arcades in Tokyo.
Oh, okay, wow! And so that's where they get their hands on some of the hard
rare
to find
stuff. Yeah, rare stuff comes from my collection. But also, I talk with the operators and like what works, what doesn't work, and what are the issues. So I think we have a pretty good pulse on the issues for arcades in Japan.
Gotcha. And now, how many development partners do you have with Exa-Arcadia at this point?
We haven't announced all of them.
Right.
but I think at the current moment it's about 35.
Wow.
And so that's a lot of developers, obviously, in Japan. We have Korea, Europe, North and South America.
Gotcha. And so do you think having that operator background helped you get a lot of these partners down?
It helps in a sense because I know what arcade owners want and how games should be optimized for the arcade. But I think being a gamer and understanding creators as well, like,
Sure.
it's a dream, right? I make a game and it goes to the arcade.
Yeah.
And then helping them mold their creation for the arcade. You know, a lot of times, a lot of developers are now making games for console, right, or smartphones, and those games aren't optimized for the arcade, right? You can't just push it out and sell it as is.
Right.
So we actually work with each developer on optimizing the game for the key KPIs that like a Dave & Buster's would need, or you as an arcade owner would need. And I think it's been a learning experience, especially for a lot of the guys outside Japan who've never been in the industry before.
Yeah.
And how this all works out.
Right.
Like, you know, things like a test menu, the operator menu, where you set like coin settings, all these type of things are only known to guys who are in the industry, right?
Yeah. Or don't have a black or a totally black or a totally white screen on your attract mode for more than a second. It always blows my mind when I'm walking past one of my games and I see something like that, and I'm like, is it broken? And it was just a second long, but you know, if it lingers there for a few seconds.
Right, and we teach all those things. Actually,
right.
how to optimize it for everything the operator needs. Like, turning off a track demo sound is something that's very foreign to many developers.
Right, yeah. Why would I want to do that?
Yeah, don't you want to hear it?
Right. Well, just put it on and let it sit there for 5-10 minutes, and you'll know exactly why.
I've worked retail before. I know how it is.
Yes, it drives you crazy. But, that's great. So, who are some of the announced developers that you have? Some of the announced content that's going to be coming to
Right,
this?
so on the Japanese side, we have a lot of the kind of classic shmup developers, so old names like Seibu Kayatsu, they who did Raiden. We have the company who owns the Jellicoe IP, which is City Connection. Success, who did Shanghai for Sunsoft before. We have some bigger developers that we can't talk about just yet,
Of course, yeah.
but they're people that everyone knows and have been in the arcade industry before, so really excited to work with them. For the North American and South American side, they're mostly newer developers, kind of indie guys who have the arcade mindset and have really good titles that we want to bring to the market.
Gotcha.
So it's a wide mix. Even in Japan, we have a game called Infinos, which is a horizontal shooting game. The music is done by the composer of Thunder Force 4 and 5 from the Mega Drive and Saturn. And so, you know, there's some pedigree there. But actually, the main game is designed by a guy who used to be a fisherman,
Oh, wow.
who just turned to love shooting games. And actually, Infinos X is his 4th game. So he's honed his craft, and we felt it was a good game, so we wanted to bring that to the arcade. So, you know, Infinos is a horizontal shooting game. We have Super Hydora, which is a Spanish shooting game by probably the most famous indie developer in Spain.
Right.
It's kind of like Gradius type of game.
Gradius meets Darius, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, kind of like that. And then we have obviously the Kung Fu versus Karate Champ, which is a new fighting game, which has gotten a lot of, I guess, surprise reaction to people and how good it is.
Right.
Right, it's because it's a brand new fighter. There's a lot of content there, and it's a bit different from what's coming out from Japan. It's a more of a serious martial arts look,
Right.
and it's easy to play. And I think that's resonating very well with people here at CAX today. And obviously, one of our big titles is Akata Blue, which is a bullet hell shooter from a company called Tamashimas. And those guys actually came from Cave before, and actually made Cave's last shmups. So they have the DNA to really make great titles. So those are some of the titles that we have. We're working with a Korean developer now for their version of Bullet Hell, which is very interesting. We're also working with a company called M2. They work closely with Sega, Taito, in Japan on console ports of existing properties.
Yeah.
And then working with them on actually a large number of titles. So I know we have a lot of shmups announced today. I think, how many titles have we announced today? Maybe we've announced 9 or 10 titles today, but we actually have 50 in the pipeline.
Wow.
And they're focused on different areas. So here at CAX, you know, we have a lot of kind of individuals. It's more of a fan-based convention, so we've kind of fine-tuned the announcements for them.
Sure.
But when we look at places like FECs, like Dave & Buster's or Round 1, the different content is going to be better, right? So 4-player games, are something we're focusing on. And so we have a number of 4-player titles of like beat 'em ups, kind of like mini games like Bishibashi Champ, and actually sports games as well.
Oh wow!
And a sports game that I'm really excited about because it's existing franchise that players in America love.
Oh wow! Yeah, that would be very unexpected coming from a small indie source as well. Because I mean, as you know, the American industry is very obsessed lately with licenses. You know, everything has to be licensed. It's very rare that you come across a brand new game that's not based on a TV show or a movie, or in the case of pinball, a rock band and whatnot. But I've been surprised that nobody's touched like a big sports franchise in a long time, because I know a lot of the people that are still in the business, like in raw thrills or play mechanics, a lot of those guys worked on things like NBA Jam or NFL Blitz and stuff, and so it's like, I wonder why nobody's taken that risk, because it seems like a no-brainer. But
yeah, sports are so big in this country, right? And it's I think if you have a good title, it can work out, and maybe just not, Jam again or Blitz again, but a new take. So we're trying something that's new and old at the same time, and hopefully we can announce it at IAPA later this year. Pretty excited about this title because even today, there's a huge fan base for it.
Awesome. Good to hear. So stay tuned. We'll find out probably in a few months on that one. I guess it's right around the corner.
It's already August.
Yeah, that's right.
So we had a lot of questions about, hey, what about games like gun shooting games or driving games, music games? So we're actually actively looking at all these different genres. But as you know, there's different tech that goes with all these, right?
Yeah.
With the driving game, you've got a steering wheel, probably gear shifter and pedals. We want to do this in a way that's modular and affordable for operators, right? We don't think there's a need for like $12,000 cabinets. You sit down where it's one game, and after it's done, what do you do with it, right? So we're trying to make a universal cabinet that works for all these different things. So the driving use case, light gun use case, and then music games. We're looking at that and looking at cabinet production next year.
Okay, so a little bit like the old Samia Thomas Wave.
Kind of like that, but we'll probably produce conversion kits for people who have existing cabinets.
Gotcha. Perfect. Yeah, and I imagine that also entails a little bit of time and money into researching which cabinets you can easily do that in.
Right. It's easy in Japan because there's so many universal cabinets, and we can do that. In the US, it's slightly different, and also US operators have different needs. So like, we talked to Dave & Buster's. I was like, well, we want a 55-inch upright that's 10 feet tall, right? You want something huge. Well, in Japan, they're like, we want something that's really ergonomic. Right? So we have to develop for the certain markets. In the US, we have some new stuff coming that's going to go on test later this year. One's actually based on a famous IP that we're looking forward to, but 4-player cabinets basically is something we're looking at producing for the US market.
Right. And that's popped in my head. I've been kind of surprised, or to a degree, that there hasn't been anybody creating conversion kits to swap out, say, like Pac-Man Battle Royale or anything like that. Or there was Virtua Tennis 4. Of course, I know there wasn't very many cabinets Virtua Tennis 4
That's
out
probably
there.
the problem.
But although in the UK, or I guess in Europe, that might be more common, because I see those popping up as more generic cabinets all the time. But at least here in the US, it seems like there's Battle Royale cabinets everywhere. But that's quite exciting that it's all coming together. So out of all of the games that you have announced, which one's your favorite to play as a gamer?
Yeah, it's tough. Myself as a fighting game player, I like the Kung Fu vs. Karate Champ because it's just something new, right? The play mechanics are kind of a mix of kind of 3D games and 2D games, so I think that's interesting. Personally, I like Infinos quite a bit because I like horizontal shooters.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have a lot of bullet hell type of games, but it's. I think for every title we have, though, there's something special in each of them, which is why we've picked them to publish them. Like, we just don't take any game, right, and publish it. Someone asked in the panel yesterday, like, can anyone just get a dev kit and make games? And no, you can't. We have to believe that your game is going to succeed somewhere for an operator. If it's not, then there's no reason to have it.
Right. It's just a waste of resources, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's the way it goes. We get a lot of proposals, and we do actually go through every single one of them to see if it can apply to some marketplace in the world.
Gotcha. So I guess if there is any developer out there that's interested, how would they get a hold of you?
You can just message us on Twitter. It's at Exa-Arcadia, just one word. Or go to our website, exa.ac. We have a mailing form. You can just mail us link to your game, and then we'll actually test it out and get back to you.
Okay, perfect. And I know I posted about this on Arcade Heroes as far as the specs, but in case anybody hadn't looked up that post, how powerful is this platform?
So we have 8 gigs of memory, so that's already more than any of the home consoles, and we have performance that's higher than a PS4 Pro.
Nice.
So we believe that any game currently will run on it, unless you're doing something really crazy.
Right.
Yeah, but we haven't had any complaints from any developers.
Okay, so it has more than enough power to do everything that's...
Yeah, I think if we look at the landscape today of different manufacturers like Sega or Taito, we have one of the highest spec machines that isn't like in a deluxe cabinet. Like Taito has Densha de Go, which is part of 3 screens, right?
Right.
I think it's 4 GTX 1080s.
Wow, I did not know that it was that intense. Wow.
Yeah, very intense on that one. We don't go to that level. So.
Sure, not necessary in those cases. But then I guess for operators, when can they expect to see this system, and how would they go about getting their hands on one?
Right, so it depends on what region you're in. We're in the US now, so I'll talk about the US. That we're doing direct sales to a lot of the independent arcades. For the bigger chains, we're directly talking with them. We have some distributors that we're also lining up, just seeing what's the best model that's going to work for owners. We want to make sure that arcade owners can get it as cheapest price as possible. Right, we're not out to gouge people.
Right.
And one of the issues we had with production recently is our production facilities are in China, and as you know, there's a recent tariff on Chinese goods from the US, and that would increase prices by 25%. So we're looking at moving the facilities to another country, so that's kind of delaying production a little bit. We're looking at probably Q4 release at the moment.
Okay, so around, as you mentioned, you'll be at IAPA, so probably around there it might be a good
Hopefully
time.
You might see a booth there with a lot more details.
Awesome. And then for the players, you had mentioned on the panel yesterday that there's a very interesting card system. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we have an NFC-based card system, and unlike the Japanese card systems, which are really cool with the different mechanics that they bring, ours are configured to work with our smartphone app. So there's engagement with clicking your card to the phone. So if you have an Android phone, you just actually touch it, and it'll launch our app. If you have an iPhone, there's a QR code that you can scan, which will also launch it as well. And what this is, there's 2 things. One is your own profile, and then there's also an app where you can follow arcades, you can follow games, and you follow players. So it's trying to create a social network, basically for our games and our players, and it's helping arcades to re-engage with their customers. So we'll talk more about it, but there are many different uses. So one is like saving your profile. One is saving data from a game. Say you had like a baseball game, and you wanted to edit your own team, you could do that. And as for our developers, they could create services like being able to trade players, things like that. And also for arcades, being able to engage their consumers directly. So we're going to provide a lot of different avenues using our card system in our app.
Gotcha, perfect. And I assume that'll be ready to go as soon as the system's available?
As soon as it's ready to go.
It's ready.
The card system is self-actually complete already. And we're looking at not only for this part of helping with like the smartphone app and saving data, but also those are games that could also use this. We're looking at it from a gameplay aspect.
Gotcha.
I think for our side is that EXA has a roadmap for the next 5 years on where we'd like to go with the industry, how we want to help the industry grow. So I think for any operators or any consumers, distributors out there. We're open to talking with them. We've had a lot of distributor interest in Asia, in Southeast Asia, Australia. A lot of the big guys have started to already talk to us actively. And they give us feedback on what works for them. So we are totally open to hearing what people want and trying to tailor the product to work for every market. So we're going to sell to everybody. There's no prejudice.
Right. So if you're a collector or an operator or whoever, then there's no restrictions there. Just,
nothing at all.
Budget.
As long as you can buy it, it's all yours. But we want to make something that works for each marketplace. So we know, like, U.S. is very different from Japan.
Yeah.
Right, and China is very different from all the other places as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I recall from when we did the blog post about it back in February, around April, was it's a pretty economical system too. I mean, it's definitely not anything like what I would expect from Capcom. Where they charge $10,000 for a kit and one game. But
right, we're trying to make it more affordable. At launch, we're going to have probably 8 to 10 titles, and what we like to do is have a set actually. So, Alcata Blue is a vertical shooting game, right? Vertical orientation screen. So having a set of 4 vertical games with the motherboard that operators can buy at a discounted price. So we're looking at these kind of sets.
Oh, gotcha. Like specific packages.
Yeah, here's a package of 4 games for a vertical cabinet.
Gotcha.
Or here's like just the horizontal set. And one thing we're doing that we hope is friendly for operators is that we know that vertical cabinets can be a pain to set up.
Yeah.
So all vertical oriented games on our platform must work in horizontal mode too. So you could buy a vertical game and just put it into your horizontal cabinet.
Gotcha. And I guess that brings up something else comes to mind along those lines is with every EXA game, I mean, so far everything that's been announced exists on another platform, but what will make it different other than being in an arcade cabinet when it's on EXA? Yeah,
so it depends on the title itself, but there's no new exclusive content. You won't sell it. Right? It needs to make sense for operators that this game will perform well and that players will like it. So in the case of like Alcata Blue, yes, originally it was a mobile game, but it's actually being completely rehauled from the ground up. And for mobile it was 16 by 9 widescreen. It is that way on the LCD cabinets, but we have actually made a 4:3 mode as well, so it works fine on CRTs. So it's got that. Basically, the stages are all redone, voices are all redone. And a game like Infamous, which has a previous release before, we've added a brand new mode to it. And actually, the creator has changed so many things in the game to make it play more like an arcade game. So it's really optimized for the arcade. I think that the games that we have are tailored for arcade use. And if you look at other places in the world, they may not have access to the older versions of these games.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we do hear like, oh, why don't you have more original titles? They're coming, right? It takes longer to make original titles.
Right. Yeah. Because I think there was a questionnaire online that had been run asking, I think G.Rev about or they were asking, where do you want us to go? Do you want us to do something original, or do you want us to maybe remaster something? And of course, you guys have Strania EX on the platform, but
which is just the first step with them. They're actually in the middle of doing a demo for a new title, and I think it's going to come next month. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago and said, okay, August we'll show you something. That is a brand new title, and then it takes time to get there.
Sure.
So we work with a lot of Japanese developers who don't speak English and may not really understand the overseas market. So we're trying to provide that bridge to talk with consumers, like, what do you want to see? Because these people have the ability to make games. It's like they just don't know what people want.
Right. A conundrum that's difficult to figure out sometimes. And of course, I know with a lot of stuff international, there's always that issue of having things lost in translation, like how the handling feels in a game, or anything along those lines. And of course, this market, as you know, is always very heavy on the redemption side and wanting some sort of angle there that's easy to convert. But,
we understand that redemption appeals to mass market.
Right.
Actually, ticket redemption is illegal in Japan. which is why they don't have it.
Yeah, they have the metal games. And
right, but you can't really redeem for anything.
Right,
so,
right.
I think that way in Japan, it's actually been harder for developers because they have to make a quality product without leaning on redemption.
Yeah. Too bad for us here, right? But we deal with it either way. And so yeah, with that, hopefully that answers a lot of questions that people have out there. I think that covered a lot of what we heard in the panel as well. Anything else to add?
There's a lot more features coming. They'll probably be announced at the Japan show in January.
Okay.
So we'll probably have a booth there showing off a lot more new titles.
Even more.
Very excited about that and looking at industry feedback on mobile games. We should have launched by then, so hopefully we have launched.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and then we'll be focusing on more of the services that we'll provide in titles. So really looking forward to working with operators around the world and helping you guys make money.
Awesome. That's something we all like to hear, of course. Now, actually, I guess one quick thing that comes to mind,
Sure.
Is there any software content other than the back end and the support structure that you guys are you guys developing your own game for this?
So we actually have our own engineering team, and we are developing things for some of our partners. So it's kind of more of a collaboration with them.
Okay.
But we do see eventually that we'll be developing our own titles too.
Right. Take baby steps to get
Yeah,
there,
but
right?
we can't do everything at once. So.
Absolutely.
We're not one of the big guys yet.
Right. Not yet, but eventually, right?
Hopefully we get there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, and also thank you for this whole project. I think from an operator perspective, I remember a couple of years ago I was at a trade show and I was talking with a big operator in Nevada, and he came to me to kind of tap my brain and see if I'd heard about anything as far as, is there anything like kits out there? Because he has dozens of locations, I think, and he doesn't want to keep buying $12,000 games or $30,000 games, as we're starting to see more of, and just wanting kits. But it's like, well, at the time, I don't know that EXA really started up yet like it had been. But
Yeah, I mean, we started in September 2017.
Gotcha, yeah, so
And
it was before that.
Yeah, it's July 2017, so in roughly 9 months, we've gotten this far already.
Well, and that's impressive. I mean, I've seen a lot of indies and small teams come through here through this business, and it's unfortunate when a lot of them have all that energy to start with, but after they get their first game out, and of course they only have one game, they're not like you guys were launching a platform and a service essentially. Things don't sell as well as they had hoped, and then you don't hear from them again.
Right.
But I think it's very exciting. I think there's a lot of operators in the States that really are salivating for something like this kind of platform.
We hope we make something that satisfies their needs.
Yeah.
And then that's why we are doing more of a platform play instead of like, oh, it's just this game.
Yeah.
Right? Because we want something that works in this situation, like you said, the vet operators, like, oh, I'm looking for something that fits my existing cabinets. So
Yeah.
hopefully we have something for him.
Absolutely.
So, I appreciate all the support you guys given us as well as covering us.
No problem.
And looking forward to showing you guys more stuff.
Yeah.
So hopefully in November,
Yeah,
we'll have something
yeah.
we need to show you.
I'll be there. I'm always at IAPA, so unless something happens, but will not jinx myself. But definitely looking forward to that. And of course, I'll have plenty more footage of the games and any more news on that. But thanks again, Eric, and for all you listening or watching, thank you for sticking with us, and we'll catch you on the next podcast vlog.
Yeah, well, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. That works.